money. It should be something we all want to learn a little bit more about. And that'll be on the first Monday of the month in November, not the second Monday. So that's something I want to have you keep in mind. And then, what else? There's some other people here who want to make announcements about other events, especially our big event on the 28th of October here in Manhattan. I'm going to ask Sally to tell you about that. Yeah.
Okay,
Sally
you won't
Jones.
forget by the end of the night.
Yeah, maybe we'll have to remind everybody when before it's all over.
Peace Action, New York State, we have chapters, Manhattan, Buffalo, Albany, Syracuse, Binghamton, Staten Island, where I live, all have a network. And we raising money to keep our network going, keep our office going. And we do one major fundraiser every year. And we give an award for a man that maybe a lot of people don't know about in this room. His name is William Sloan Coffin. He died in 2006, but he was the executive director of Peace Action for many years. He was the face of abolishing nuclear weapons. He ran the Riverside Church on anti-nuclear programs and was the head of Riverside Church. And was very well known. He wrote very widely. And we have given this award every year since 2007. A couple of years ago, we gave it to Barbara Lee, Representative Barbara Lee. You may know her. And she's the great anti-war ally in Congress. And last year, we gave it to our good friend and our friend Peace Brigade, stalwart and my mentor and many of our mentors, Carol Houston. This year, we're giving it to Medea Benjamin. Now, you might not all know who Medea Benjamin is. She is about this big, and if you saw her, you would never forget her. She's the co-founder of something called Code Pink Women for Peace. And they began in 2002, I think. It was 2002. And they're creative anti-war progressive activists, and they wear, like, anybody who's got pink on, you know, you might be considered, somebody would mistake you for a code pink woman. I should have worn my pink. And they have been an inspiration. Yeah, there you go. You always have to wear something. They've been an inspiration for all of us over the last, let's see, now is it 11 years? Just with creative artwork, creative protest, just always lively, always in your face, sometimes doing things you might be a little nervous about doing yourself, like standing up in a hearing in the Senate or the House and saying no to war. They did something recently, waving their hands with red paint on them to remind people of the killings from drones. Medea just in the spring stood up when President Obama was giving his speech at the National Defense College and said, you have to close down Guantanamo. Don't forget Guantanamo. Don't forget the people killed by drones. And it made national news. And when I'm sure you might have heard the news yourself that morning, you're saying, go Medea, you know, especially if you know her, go Medea. And we knew then we needed to give her the award. Just for having the courage and the spunk and the timing to give us all a voice, which she did. So you are all invited to this event. It's October 28th It's not far away. It's at Prince and Broadway in the Scholastic Building, which is the children's book publisher. And we'll be on the 11th floor. We have activist rates, so you kind of pick the rate that fits you. And if any of the Yaya students want to come, there is a rate for students, but get in touch with us, and if that's too much, we'll work it out. We want you, especially the Yaya students, we want you there. I think, just please come. And that's our point. We want you to come, we want you to celebrate Medea, and people who can pay will help us keep our operation going. People who don't have it will be supportive, and their work and their activism is what counts. So take one of these if you didn't already get one. I'll just pass, and there's some invitations. Yeah, there's invitations and envelopes, and I brought a few. Some people got them in the mail, but if you didn't get them in the mail, you can pass them. So I hope you come.
Okay, yeah, that's the 28th of October. You can basically, I don't think are we going to be collecting at the door?
Yeah, if you, you should RSVP.
Yeah.
So we know how much food to order.
Yeah, so what's the best way for people to let you know that they want to come?
Well, there is a website, panys.org,
Okay.
and you can do everything at that website. That's
Okay.
peaceactionnewyorkstate.org.
Okay, so yeah, if you're interested, and I hope you are, please make sure you leave with the web address or the phone number, so we can get you in the door to hear Medea. She's an electrifying speaker. She's somebody who's been around the world basically as a peacemaker, and she's very, very energetic and inspiring, dedicated.
And we have memorabilia from Code Pink that will be there on the silent auction. We just hooked up
great.
with some of the men who created a lot of the artwork for that. Very interesting hearts and the bust up the bank, which is like a bust. All crazy things. So it'll be
Good. So
fun.
you'll hear more about this event soon, especially hope everybody's let us know how we can stay in touch. I think those are all the announcements. Am I leaving any out? Okay, so we'll proceed with Amy.
I just want to check, our next meeting is the first Monday in November.
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, thanks for reminding me.
Hello, one.
Good evening. We're here from the Yaya Network, Youth Activist Youth Allies, and Amy.
Naima.
Shayla.
Hey everyone, I'm
And I'm just going to do the little setup, and we're going to take it from here.
I think you'll have to speak louder.
Oh, sorry. Okay, can you hear me now? There is a mic if we need it. Can you hear me okay?
Yes,
fine.
perfectly.
Better?
Yes, excellent.
Better.
Okay. So a couple of years ago, Yayas were founding members of a coalition that included students, teachers, lawyers, advocates of all kinds, that forced the New York City Department of Education to pass one of the most progressive policies in the country, restricting what military recruiters can and cannot do in schools. And we thought, yay, you won. And they then proceeded not to implement the policy. So,
No.
yeah, boo.
Ooh.
And whenever we've gone back to them about it, they say to us, well, show us the data. You know, you tell us where there's a problem and we'll fix it, because nobody's complaining. Well, no one's complaining because nobody knows about the policy. So the young folks who are working at Yaya now are devising a campaign to start to produce what it is that we need to produce to get the Department of Ed to do their job. And one of the first parts that has to happen is for us to make sure that people know what's in that regulation. So, take it away.
Okay, so the regulation we got passed is called A825. And basically what it says is that all schools have to hand out opt-out forms within the first week, no, by October month for military recruiters for the DOE to not be able to give military recruiters their information. So the opt-out form is supposed to be signed by either a parent or by the student. But a lot of teachers don't let students know that they can sign the form themselves. So a lot of times, you put the form in the bag and you take it home and, it never gets signed. Recruiters have access to you. Principals were supposed to designate a staff member in the school to provide information on military recruitment, but many schools don't practice that.
In addition to that, also what also goes along with Chancellor's Regulation A825 is that it is required by federal law that students should get the same access as military recruiters and access as educational and career access. Well, what exactly does this mean? This means that military recruiters are not allowed to just walk into the schools. Many times military recruiters come in and be like, hey, you guys, we would love to show you a presentation. No, they're not allowed to do that. They must have an appointment. They must sign in and sign out. They're also not allowed to come into classrooms, gyms, cafeterias, unless there is a designated area. Unless they have that in there and they make that appointment that if they're going to be in the cafeteria or they're going to be in the gymnasium, then they're going to be there. They're not allowed to roam the halls or interrupt classrooms. A lot of the times, these military recruiters come into classrooms. They may interrupt your child's math class, and the teacher's not being able to teach that math class, and they have to put it off because these military recruiters come in. Also, we found out that these military recruiters, they come in and they roam these halls, and there's been a lot of sexual assaults with these military recruiters roaming the halls. So what we did, we put in this Chancellor's Regulation, they have to have an assigned room, they have to sign in and out. Also, there's a lot of propaganda for the military. If there's going to be a lot of military banners and information, they must be in the same area as college recruiters' information as well. So if there's a wall of college information, there needs to be a wall with military information as well. These students must have equal access to not only college, career, and military.
So in addition to all of that, schools also administer the ASVAB test, which stands for Armed Service Vocational Battery. Armed Service Vocational Aptitude Battery Test.
A little louder.
Sorry, the Armed Service Vocational Aptitude Battery Test, which measures which branch students can fall into, which branch of the military, by how well they perform on the test. And New York City DOE schools must select option 8, which says that students need to have their privacy protected, and they cannot release their information to the military. But schools have not been following this. So that's what the last section has said.
I forgot to mention that the opt-out forms that's signed, once a child signs the opt-out form in 9th grade, they don't have to sign it again every year unless they go to a different school. So that one opt-out form is supposed to keep their information protected against recruiters all throughout high school. Yeah.
Is it okay to ask a question?
Yeah.
Or no?
Feel free.
How are they supposed to go about tracking that? Because that seems like it's supposed to be on file, is that it? That the opt-out form is on file in the office, and that what, recruiters see that those are people they can't go to?
Well,
Let me take that one, because that's a technical one.
Okay.
It used to be that the recruiter would come to individual schools and would ask for the list. Several years ago, the Department of Ed got several complaints from principals about recruiters really aggressively demanding those lists and creating aggressive problems in the school. So their response, which didn't make any sense, but now what happens is at the end of the opt-out period, so towards the end of October, beginning of November, the school will enter all the data into the giant computerized database, and it'll go directly to the Central Department of Ed. And the Department of Ed will then send the list of non-opted out students directly to the recruiters. The bad thing about this is there used to be many schools that recruiters never bothered to go to, and now they're automatically given all those lists. On the other hand, it keeps the recruiter out of the school in terms of demanding the list. We actually like them to go to demand the list and create a problem with the principal, because then it pisses the principal off and they're less friendly with them. So,
Nice.
Yeah.
I have a question. So in other words, a recruiter, a few recruiters can just show up at a school? They don't have to make an appointment?
No, they're not allowed to. In chances, they used to, but in chances regulation, we said, it is in chances regulation A825, they cannot come into the school without an appointment.
It was my impression that anybody who entered the school had to sign in and out. I don't know how, were they given special preference? Did they just walk
Yes.
in?
A lot of special preference.
Hi, I'm sorry, thanks for coming. I only got two of your names, Shayla and Nancy, and I didn't get,
Naima.
excuse me?
Naima.
Naima? So, a couple of things I want to ask. So right now, this is an opt-out form. In other words, if you want recruiters not to mess with your data, not to call you up at home, not to send you mailings, not to accost you in the halls, you have to, as a student, sign this form. Now, usually what we try and do is do just the opposite. We make them do the work. In other words, what we want to do is change it so that it's an opt-in, so that if you want recruiters to harass you, then you have to write a letter saying, yes, I would love you to harass me.
That's a good one.
Okay, so I'm going to throw it back to you. What can students and teachers do to facilitate that? And then to make that change happen. And then the second thing I want to mention is that though recruiters are not allowed into buildings without appointments, they stand outside the buildings and do recruiting. And I want you guys as students to think about coming out there and challenging them and bringing your own tabling and counter-recruiting. So just...
That is a wonderful segue into what I'm about to tell you. Before I go into this, is there any more questions?
what year was A825 made official?
I think 2009?
Yeah. Right.
2009.
Yes.
What has the attitude been of the teachers union and the principals union? Because if they would cooperate with you, you could get a lot of data about where,
Good
people are
question.
barging into their classrooms and everything.
Good question.
From my understanding, teachers don't really know much about it because it's not really made to be a big deal in schools. It's just like, here, hand this paper out, give it to your kids. There's no explanation or no context behind it.
Well then, follow up, maybe you could sit down with the UFT and the principals union and tell them about these laws so that they're informed and then they can
Exactly.
play more of an active role.
Very good.
Well, what we're doing right now is we're trying to do something similar to that, which
Right.
is get a meeting with the DOE. So we're building a campaign, but first we want to get data and get numbers so that when we go to have this conversation, we can show them, like we're not just saying things, we have facts.
So in order to do that, as a segue into which I'm sorry I didn't catch your name in the red.
Oh, me,
Yeah,
Jack.
Jack, Mr. Jack was saying that. Actually, to gather data and to get people informed, we actually have two things. We have a complaint form, so like, if, like, for example, if your school doesn't give all the students an opt-out form, or if military recruiters, if you find military recruiters roam the hall, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, we actually have a form and the numbers that you can call them, or you can write it down, and you could email us the story. And also for sufficient data, we also have. Can you take this out, please? Yeah. We also have a military recruitment survey, which says basically like, what's your grade level? Did any of the parents or did any of the teachers say that you can opt out, or your parents can opt out, or you can't opt out? How many military recruiters come into your school? Once a month, twice a month, et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah, so basically we're just trying to collect the data of how many students actually sign these opt-out forms. I see a hand, I'm gonna get to you in like 2 seconds. Who actually sign the opt-out form, and we just wanna get like stories of interactions with the recruiters. Yes, sir.
The gentleman over here previously mentioned that if you try the union, the UFT, have you also tried the Parents Association?
No, we haven't reached out to parents yet. And in terms of the teachers union, right now, we're working with them for the DOE.
In order to, the campaign that got the thing passed in the first place, we did in fact work with the teachers union, which at the time actually passed at one of the delegate assemblies. I think they passed a motion saying that they wanted recruiters out of schools altogether, and they congratulated themselves and never talked about it again. Right now, we're in the very first stages of data collection for this campaign. And I think you're right that contacting the unions directly is very helpful. We need contacts. If people have good contacts, we especially want to get a hold of the guidance counselors unions as well. One of the things that they didn't mention, my favorite bit of this is being the grammar police that I am. There's a phrase in here that I assume that what they meant to say was that every school should have someone who can provide guidance on issues related to the regulation on military recruitment. But what it basically says is every school is supposed to have someone who can provide guidance on issues related to military recruitment. So we're going to start a campaign to really push for who's providing this guidance. Where are they getting their information from? We can provide training, we can provide access to materials, and if you're not doing this properly, you're out of compliance with the regulation. So we need contacts. If people know personal contacts at the UFT, with the guidance counselors union, with the principals union, those would all be very, very helpful to us rather than just cold calling. So.
Yes, the recruiters are able to get information from students who are 9th graders or 10th graders?
11 and 12 only.
11 and 12 only. So they're never going to junior highs.
Well, they do go. But the lists that are given out by the DOE is only, that's one of the things we got. They had been giving out 9 through 12, and we got them to limit it to 11 and 12.
I remember it was 9 through 12. Then what is this test, the Armed Services Aptitude thing? Is that something that everybody takes, or can you opt out of that as well?
Do you know? It's marketed to schools as a crew. Yeah, you got it. Go ahead. Go ahead, go.
Amy, feel free. Well, they the way that they sell it to schools is that it's a career placement test. So schools get all excited, oh, my kids are gonna get, you know, their career placement, and they do like all the processing and all the work to get the scores and things like that. But the ASVAB is really the test to that the military uses to see where they wanna place you, like where you would be best if you wanna be like a grunt or you wanna be a cook or
Sure.
Pilot.
But so, what I'm wondering is who takes it and is there any problem if you don't want to take it?
In New York.
In
In New York, it's voluntary.
Yeah, in New York City, it's not used that much. The few schools that we're aware of that give it, some of them have been selecting option 8, which keeps the results private, some are not. On the other hand, it is largely used upstate, and that's one of the things that Barbara's gonna talk about, something that we can have an impact on as well. So we're gonna leave that for her to cover.
This is wonderful.
Next, that's Barbara's. One thing that I wanted to say is that so much of the time and the energy and the discussion around this work focuses on the opt-out forms, and I would really encourage people to let it go. Because if they don't get the student's information from the school, they'll get it somewhere else. Opt-out, the main purpose of opt-out forms or leafleting about opt-out forms is to begin a conversation with students, with parents, with teachers. Why are they in your schools? Why do they want your information? You know, that's really the only use of it. If they don't get it from the school, they will get it when the person signs up online for scholarship information. They'll get it when they take the SATs. They'll get it when they purchase the,
Graduation ring.
yeah, all kinds of graduation rings. So instead, we're really, really encouraging people to focus on the other aspects of this regulation that have some teeth.
Right.
And that's where we really need to document places where it's not happening.
I have a question for Shayla.
Yeah.
You said that the military recruiters are not, when they're in the school, they have to sign in and they have to have specific places for appointments, etc.
Right.
There's nothing that stops them from standing outside and talking to students? Okay. Do you-
Are you
I'm
asking-
asking, there's nothing that stops them from spending the afternoon outside of the high school and talking to students?
From my knowledge, there really isn't any like regulation or rule that says they can't be outside talking to these students. But if they're talking to students, that doesn't mean we can't talk to students, which leads into us surveying them, surveying the students about the military recruitment in their schools, and also the complaint sheet, which we would love for you all to help us hand it out if you're willing to, and also if you run into any trouble, because in the past, Yayas, when they were asking students to fill out these sheets and they were surveying the students outside the schools, a couple of police officers and security guards actually came to them and said, oh, you need to move, you need to move. So they were like, as they were surveying the students, they were walking and talking or whatever, and I guess they weren't moving fast enough, and the police officer actually arrested that person. So, being as Yaya, we actually sued NYPD. And it says, and we won. If you get into any trouble while surveying, we have legal documentation that you actually can survey these students.
And we will really, really, really appreciate it. It will really help our campaign if anybody has the time to volunteer to do that for us. Yes.
Does it say that you have the right to survey, or just that your right to be on the street in front of the?
They used to, the reason
The
for,
ones I use just said that.
yeah, it's that you're allowed to be handing out materials.
Exactly, yeah.
Handing out materials.
Because I had an experience at Christopher Columbus High School with the Stringer survey years ago, And I was alone because the partner didn't show up, and within a few minutes, the security came down and an assistant principal, and, you know, they surrounded me, and a young woman was filling it out for me, we had talked. She got so frightened, what she saw happening to me, that she tore it up and ran away. So now I even had the agreement, but there was some principals are just, they don't want you anywhere near the school, it's really,
Well,
it's a reality check.
you know, while we were getting all this data, the old Yayas actually found out that in their website, like one of the first paragraphs, it said, "School ownership is the goal." And I know, and we all know, that principals, as much as pro-military as they are, they do not want anybody controlling or taking away their control or their access to their schools.
Yeah, make sure you let everybody know how we can stay in touch and give you some support. My question was, do you go to different schools, and if so, how do you coordinate your activities?
What we do actually is that we found the schools that most military recruiters actually target in all boroughs. And we go to those schools and we hand out complaint sheets. We're in the process of handing out complaint sheets and surveys, because we found that most military recruiters actually target schools where there's low income students, people of Black and brown, Hispanic people, and Latino students. And basically we find that a lot of youth, they just want to go somewhere, be somebody, do something, and we just want to show them that there's other ways, you know?
One of the things that we've stressed a lot is that it's really not sufficient to go into communities with limited resources and say to young people, don't join the military. That we have to make available the range of options that are open to all the privileged kids. So one of the documents that we created and that I brought home and left at my house is a sheet that has some ways that people can use as alternatives to meet their goals, which included not just paying for college, but also getting job training, ways to travel, ways to do something meaningful that serves their community, and that we wanted to make sure that young people had access to that information. And we really recommend that when people go out and are talking with young people, especially when you get the middle-aged white folks going out, that it's really important that your message is not just don't join the military. That it's we have to fight for more options. We have to join with the groups that are fighting for more after-school programs, that are fighting for better schools, that are fighting to keep the funding in the job training programs. And so that's something that we thought is really important. If there's anybody who is interested or willing to help us do surveys, you've got copies, you can make copies from there and slice it. That's actually made so you can slice it in half and get 2 per sheet.
And we can volunteer too.
We can do some here.
Yeah, not volunteering, asking a question. So the recruiters, do they go principally to these schools that do not have JROTC or also to ones that have the JROTC? Is it more or less guaranteed that they would not be the recruiters of the JROTC because they're doing their job on the spot?
There's, from my knowledge, that schools that have JROTC already have military recruiters there, but they may have even more. And schools that don't have military recruiters in there, but they do have a large amount of students that are Black, brown, or Latino of low incomes, they will come.
Thanks.
You're welcome.
I have a question about your survey. Have you found that it's better if the students are asking other students to fill out the survey, or it doesn't matter? You know, I'm just wondering about the results that you've seen. Is it, if we could get students, support students to use the survey, would you get a better response? That's a question, what do you think?
So you mean in having students going out and doing the survey versus y'all?
I'm just wondering what your experience has been, if you've seen, that the students are more open to other students than they might be to an adult they don't know.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, it's always easier to communicate with someone when you can relate to them physically first, because they don't know that you're like this amazing activist. They just know that you look how you look. Yeah. It may not look like a youth, so I think so. What do y'all think?
I think it depends on the situation. Like, if you have something so great to say, even though you're older, it wouldn't matter. Like, they would still be captivated if they care or focus about the issue.
I agree. I agree with both.
Did that answer your question?
Yeah.
Okay.
So just one more question, sort of following up on that last question. Do you guys have any plans to reaching out to other students directly about doing this kind of work?
Well, we're a youth organization, so we already have youth on board, and we're also trying to appeal to our friends and other high schools, so hopefully.
And we're also a part of a coalition called Dignity in Schools, which is fighting to end the school to prison pipeline. But it's a coalition of a lot of groups that have youth in it already, so we already like
Interacting
with them. So
Yeah.
I'm guessing that the parents of a lot of kids also think that the military might be a good option for their kids, because they also, it's hard to know what the kid can do, especially when things are the way they are economically, so difficult to get jobs. So are there any programs to help parents, educate parents, also to know that there are other alternative ways that maybe they could explore with their children?
I think that's a great question. Actually, during the summer, Nancy and I, we actually went to the Youth Climate Justice Summit this summer in the end of July, and a lot of parents came around, and they came to our table while we were tabling, and some parents actually were like, yes, I'm considering my daughter or my son to join the military. And we basically had a conversation, and we basically made it clear that, look, we're not telling you what to do, we just want you to be informed. Because this is what the military recruiters say, and this is actually what happens. Because a lot of the military recruiters say that, oh, your contract is only 2 years, he or she doesn't have to go to war. That's not the case. We all know here that's not the case. If there's a war, you're going to be deployed.
Yes.
And a lot of them
That's
say
true.
that you're gonna get your benefits. That's not the case as well. You need to have honorable discharge to get your benefits, and that's basically what we said. And we gave them a bunch of pamphlets, and we also got their emails so we can give them further information. And what we're trying to do now is actually go into schools and go into any place we can to run these counter-military recruit 101 workshops with parents, guidance counselors, teachers, students, because the goal is not for you to not join the military because that's their choice. We're trying to inform them of the other options and what they need to know versus what they should know.
So, may I ask another question? So what you're looking for here, perhaps, is people to help you do the surveys and to help you get into other schools where we have contacts and with parents and stuff in other places. So the way we should contact you about that is through Amy. We should tell.
Did y'all put your emails down on the list?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, so there's probably people here who want to help, so we'll try and get back to you. Okay?
Yeah. I'm sorry, I'll get to your question too.
Do you try and contact as many PTA groups as possible to reach out to parents? That way, as well as to the students directly. Because, as you said, the parents influence the students,
Yeah.
so they should be well informed.
I agree.
I think
We
that's,
agree.
Yeah.
that's something we can help with.
That would be great.
Do you have a question?
Have you ever tried to get an individual who has served in the Army to speak towards your cause?
Ooh,
Because I
that's
think
great.
it would be powerful if you're making a speech about your cause to have an individual, you know, in their uniform speak against going into the armed forces.
We actually have.
Yeah.
Do you want to speak about that?
Yeah, so we went to CSI, a CUNY in Staten Island, and we spoke about, they've been debating if they should have ROTC join their campus. And we've had like kind of a debate where it's like veterans were actually speaking against ROTC coming onto the campus, and then the general of the CSI, of the military came and spoke about why ROTC should join. It was really interesting to see them talk, and the veterans definitely had appealed emotionally to the people, so we'll see what happens with CSI.
I would love to see that.
Yeah.
And also, twice so far, Yayas have organized a citywide alternative to the military career fair. And at both of those, the folks from Iraq Vets Against the War have come out and supported. And the first time we ran it, a whole bunch of them showed up in their uniforms, and as young people poured into the auditorium, the ones who were interested in the military saw the uniforms, made a beeline for their table, and got an earful. I mean, those guys were fabulous. So we've been coordinating with them as well, along with Vets for Peace and so on.
I'd just like to know if you do any legislative work, because a lot of the jobs the first job that kids used to get out of high school have been taken away by NAFTA and sent to other countries. And so, in terms of long-range planning, there would have to be some kind of pressure put on politicians, to get those jobs back.
So we're like on the beginning stages of our campaign, but I know Amy has been speaking to councilwomen and men, and we're trying to get them on our side. So definitely, we're trying to get there.
And we're also trying to get, as you all know, the mayor elections are coming up, and we're actually trying to figure out whether this new mayor will either be on our side or against us. So that's definitely one of our targets.
Yeah. I have a question. When you graduate from high school, do you foresee that you'll be able to continue your work in college, and how will you go about doing that?
Well, actually, we're both college students. I go to Hunter College, where right now there's a whole General Petraeus is teaching. Right.
Oh
and
no.
CUNY is coming ROTC is coming to CUNY, and it's been really hectic. So we've been trying to organize around that. So I feel attached to the cause.
Yeah, and I go to Brooklyn College, so it's the same thing, seeing the recruiters and having two recruitment offices right around the corner from my school with a high school next door. So, yeah. I see myself doing this work for a long time.
Can you stay connected with Yaya even though you're not? Okay, great. They don't graduate you.
What does YAYA stand for?
Youth activists, youth allies.
Thank you.
Activists, youth allies.
Do you want us to talk more about our organization as well?
If you could.
Yeah. So
I don't know.
YAYA stands for Youth Activists, Youth Allies, so we're an anti-oppression. We work on an anti-oppression framework, and we start off with learning about political education and current events, and then we track 2, which is what we're in, is like more, we delve deeper into like campaign work, organizing skills, and now we're working on our campaign to demilitarize high schools, which is what we're speaking to you guys about.
Thank you.
Yeah, one last question. Do you recommend that we give out the opt-out or don't give it out? Because I had stopped giving it out about a year ago.
I personally feel that if people are going to put the time and the effort in to be outside of schools giving out something, that I would love for it to be the survey that they're doing, frankly. I think
So
we'll get a much better.
the parent-teacher night, it's the parents. You want to give it to the parents?
Sure. And because part of what we need to do is to inform members of the school community of what the regulation contains, because they may not file a complaint based on this little piece of paper, but if nobody's ever said to them, recruiters have no business taking your instructional time, then in May, when a teacher gives their time up to a recruiter, somebody may go, wait a minute, they're not supposed to do that, are they? And hopefully we'll file a complaint. So personally, I mean, these folks have worked really hard to put together the survey and so on. And if people are going to put in that kind of time and speak with students outside of schools, I personally would love it if it was doing the survey.
But you don't have a lot of time right there. Teacher nights are really
Yeah.
talk.
Yeah.
But can you give out the survey and they have a place to send it back? Because they won't probably, they
Do it
won't
right
fill
then
it
and
out.
there.
They're
Yeah,
just,
that's true.
they're racing in to get their
That's true.
appointment with the teacher.
We all want to get in school.
Yeah. I think maybe the
We actually have our, on the surveys, our contact information right here in the bottom.
But it's yeah, it's true. They may not get
The
them back.
complaint one,
Mm-hmm.
and I believe the,
very good.
What about when they're leaving?
They're leaving when they're leaving.
Yeah, they're leaving.
Yeah.
Parent-teacher night.
Yeah, they seem tired, ready to go home.
They usually annoyed at their kids.
Yes, they got bad I think maybe the complaint form is a good one to use.
Yeah.
It basically says, did you know your school isn't supposed to do this and that and the other thing?
Yeah.
Just to hand it out. Is a good one to hand out.
With your contact
Yes.
information, if they're calling you.
Exactly.
And, to me, using the opt-out forms as a way to start a conversation is not a bad thing.
That's what we did.
If you use that as your way to start a conversation with, who's in your school? Has your kid talked to a recruiter? Are they calling your house?
They
How
love the
annoying is that?
form that has the alternatives to military.
Yep.
They love that.
Yeah, we've got a whole stack. There's not enough cover. Yeah, and
No,
also we just don't
we
have enough.
have one that's options for life at the high school, as well as what you should know about enlistment. What are the myths and what are the...
Could people talk just a little louder? It's very hard for me to hear.
Sorry.
Oh, no.
I'm worried we're eating up the time of our other
I always think our
speakers who have
sheets
stuff
are
to present.
No. Try to pick up on some of this.
So, does anybody have any more questions? You're welcome. No?
Should we pass it?
Yeah, sure.
Okey-doke.
Can you put this down? Thanks. So, okay, our next speaker is Barbara Harris, who many of you know. Thank you so much.
no problem.
They not only know me, they volunteered, and they've done most of this work already. And I feel like I'm going to be redundant, but I wanted to pick up on a couple of things. The privacy issue is really a very important issue now. And so with the opt-out, as well described, the recruiters get just name, address, and phone number from an opt-out form. And then it is, as they said, sent to the military, put on a big, huge database called JAMMERS, which is the Joint Advertising and Marketing Research Survey, which is paid for and developed by the military. And its use is for gathering information for students from high school through 25 for profiling and getting further information. And as Amy said, there are many ways to get this information, because Barbara Walker and I were at a career fair one day, and it was at Murray Bertram High School, and we walked in the cafeteria, and the first 3 tables were Army, Navy, Marine, in uniforms, with computers, with equipment, with handouts. The kids were on the floor doing push-ups to show how strong they were. They were signing up to get the bookmark or the pin or the cup, giving name, address, some phone number, anything they wanted, they just gave to them. That information goes right on the database. They buy a graduation ring. There's a relationship between the Department of Defense, the Pentagon, and corporations to share this private information. So, as Amy said, and she's absolutely right, and when we did the opt-out initially, before the 2009, that was the only thing we were really giving out in the beginning, and it did start a conversation. Protect your students' privacy. We stood outside the school with a little paper, our little half sheet of a type of opt-out form, which was official. Protect your students' privacy. Sign it, or else the military can get some information and just bring it into the office and file it. And I can't tell you, and half the people in the room can tell you, how parents responded, and it did open a conversation. Because some parents said to me, they're calling already. How do they know about my kid? Some of them weren't even in the 11th or 12th grade yet. They were angry, they were frustrated, but they were scared. There were so many people, because we go to schools in underserved neighborhoods, and they don't always speak English, and they are afraid to sign papers. That's another thing. Some parents are afraid to sign anything if they're an immigrant or a refugee. Fortunately now, because of the chancellor's regulations too, a student can sign it. So one of the things that's a little complicated for me is that I know that in some high schools that the administration is following the chancellor's resolution. We need a revolution. And they do have a point person, and that person does give out the opt-outs and does follow up, and if someone doesn't respond, goes and speaks, hey, and how come you didn't send one in? Are you thinking about it? And then follows up, yes, you wanted to get information or not. And others don't, so it's a little complicated. But if the student signs it in the classroom, the parent never knows. So if you're asking parents, you know, about the opt-out, they may not know. It doesn't mean it wasn't done. It's difficult. So I think this campaign is good to find out what's happening in the school. We did that under Scott Stringer, if you remember. Scott Stringer ran the campaign to find out what was going on in high schools way before the chancellor's resolution. And the resolution was also based on findings there. That's when I was at Christopher Columbus trying to get the survey filled out, and I was terrified because I felt so bad for this young girl. But fortunately, I walked around. They told me I had to go to a bus stop. That's where I had to be way to a bus stop if I wanted to talk to students. So I walked around the school and found there were other entrances and exits, and kids were coming out there. Thank you. But they gathered a lot of great information, and nobody knew when recruiters were indeed in the school when they shouldn't be there. And the chancellor's resolution was filed and in place, and I give the Yayas and the New York Civil Liberties Union and all the other groups who did that a lot of credit, but they gathered the data, and that's why this is important to gather more data. I'm not aware of some of the things they mentioned, and we do go to schools in underserved neighborhoods. I check the graduation rates before I send someone there, and the graduation rates are telling, whether it's one school we go to has a 42% graduation rate,